bring you tonight, which is that it's almost always so much softer than we think it is. So just take a minute and so gently check in with how your body feels right now. And there's no need to concentrate or focus or gather. Don't do any of that. Don't meditate. Don't analyze. Just and maybe even if it helps you, you can give gentle names to the things that kind of contact your awareness. Like for me, feet, fingers and hands touching, the fan blowing on my right cheek, the in-breath felt so good just now. And of course, these actual sensations are way deeper than words, but I'm trying to spell out that way that experience kind of flows and shifts like an orchestra, like a symphony rather. Even the thoughts that arise, there's no problem with thinking. I just now remembered that I need to leave work early on Wednesday, and I had a little flicker of anxiety, and that's fine too. What did that feel like? You may notice that the body, heart, mind starts to kind of naturally on its own gather and slow, kind of knit together in a gentle, soft way. Okay. All right. So I invite you to, if you would like, I invite you to stretch gently and carefully. And that's the most dangerous part of the sport of meditation, is standing up afterward or trying to move. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Who wants to take a stab? I'm going to ask a question. How do we cultivate concentration? Sir? A lot of practice. Doug says a lot of practice. Very good. That's a great answer. Judy?
I would agree with that, a lot of practice, but what I found was so helpful for me when I began meditating. I didn't tell myself I get to 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I started with 2 minutes. No, I just put on my phone. To do it, so I train my mind that way. So I would start off, but more often, but only 2 minutes at a time. Very, very low.
Great, thank you. Judy said that what was helpful, and she agreed with Doug, who said practice, lots of practice. And Judy set her time intervals very small at the beginning, like 2 minutes. Like, can you just do 2 minutes a day? Just hit it. And instead of doing, a big block and feeling heroic or defeated or measuring, just 2 minutes, knock it out. High frequency, low duration. Those are both outstanding. Sir?
Just one final thought. It's not to turn it into gameplay. And what I mean by that was focusing by counting breaths. And when the thoughts enter your peripheral thoughts. Going, damn it, start another one. I just continue on to 10, and I keep score.
I like that. Very good. Doug raised a good point, and I'll get to William. Doug said, you may have heard this already, folks, that when you're practicing concentration, when you're trying to really develop your concentration in meditation, you count your breath, which is absolutely true. And a lot of teachers and instructions will say, count like 1 to 8 or 1 to 10. And if a peripheral thought kind of comes in and steals the spotlight and you forget what you were doing, start over at 1, which to me has always felt really punitive. Like, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I don't like that. So Doug found that it was better for him to just keep going wherever he thought he might be. Just keep going. Don't make it a thing. Don't get, and also catch the aversion. Catch the kind of, damn it, and just be like, nope, going on. Great point. William?
To lose the language of the word concentration and not focus on the word, because now you have undermined your intent, and chances are your understanding of the word concentration is not what you think it is.
Great point. William raises the point that the word concentration is a terrible translation of the word samadhi, which 9 times out of 10, if you did a word count of the number of times the Buddha said a certain word, samadhi would be off the charts. It's a big one. He loves that word. And that word very often is translated in English as concentration. The worst translation ever. It's terrible. It's okay, but it's terrible. It's bad for me because I do this. And William says, for him, what was really valuable was losing the word concentration, losing even that concept of like, and also he raises a great point. Whatever you think concentration is, it's probably not what the old man was meaning when he said samadhi, and he's absolutely right. The word samadhi is, let's say, I prefer the translation gathering or unification. Samadhi, if you break down the etymology of the word, is really interesting. Sam means with or in union with, and adi means like a place, the place, a stable. Like imagine the way water always finds its lowest level. That's what the mind does when we let it. So these are all great points. The actual mechanism of how samadhi happens is what I'm looking for. And these were all great answers. And I probably could have been better with the way I asked the question. Rob, were you going to say something? Let go. Oh, wow. Way to steal my thunder, Rob. Rob says let go. Brilliant. Great. Love it. And that's another great thing about it. One thing that might be counterintuitive, and I'm going to try to do this. I always blow this one, but I love this idea. This might blow your mind, but I want to tell you right now that everything in the entire universe is either a bowl or is not a bowl. I know, right? Mind-blowing, right? Fan, not a bowl. Bowl. Trippy, right? You can do the same thing for potatoes. Everything in this universe is either a potato or is not a potato. You're welcome. Okay, the relevance of that bizarre thing that, I can't believe I just repeated to a room full of adults and people on Zoom, is that one way to think about samadhi or gathering or unification or concentration, whatever you like, is that generally you pick an object like the breath or like the general feeling in the body or the sound of the fan in the room in which I'm meditating, and you choose it and you say, this is my object. I'm going to pay attention to this. I'm going to gather and unify my awareness, my attentional faculty onto this object. This is also how people who use mantras, this is the practice with a mantra also, or with a visualization. You practice gathering and unifying the mind onto this one thing. The funny trick of that, so then we generally think of concentration or samadhi as a practice of this one thing, right? Forgetting that everything in the universe is either your breath or is not your breath. So on the one hand, you are gathering your attention on the breath. On the other hand, you are letting go of the entire rest of the cosmos. If I pay attention only to this breath that is in front of me, I have let go of my work and my family and my bills and my dreams and my upsets and my desires and the news podcast I wanted to listen to, etc., etc., etc. And there is only this breath for me. So in a way, you could think of concentration or samadhi as this unification on this object, but in a sneaky kind of way, it's actually the great letting go of everything else. And why is that important? The Buddha discovered that the mind, the heart that lets go is profoundly blissful. There is a peace. There is a blissfulness in the letting go. My whole life of self-referential, I like this, I don't like that, I want this, I don't want that, etc., just gets put aside. And I simply dwell in that simple presence, in that simple knowing, this breath, this breath, and the deep well-being that, strangely enough, you can see neurologically speaking in a lab when you hook people up to fMRI cameras and EEGs and all that stuff. They're like, wow, what a trip. The parts of their brain that do things like compassion and fellow feeling and kindness just lit up. The part of their brain that does executive function and attention just lit up. And the parts of our brain that does that kind of self-referential, depressive, anxious, narcissistic spinning that a lot of us do when we're not watching, just kind of starts to go a little dormant. So the heart finds this letting go profoundly blissful. And maybe you start and you get a little taste and a little taste and a little taste. Remember, it's like a love affair. We're having a courtship with our own heart. So one way to think about samadhi practice, or one way to think about meditation, where we're kind of with an eye towards developing our stability, our concentration, our gathering, our unification, whatever you want to call it, our samadhi. One way to think about it is, I'm going to pick an object and I'm going to develop my concentration faculty with it and let go of everything else. And even if you can only do that for a second here and there, beautiful, perfect, wonderful, you're doing great. Like Judy said, high frequency, low duration. Like Doug said, take the whole judging, you blew it, measuring mind out of it. Just start again. Like William said, get that whole idea of like bearing down and concentrating and squeezing out. It's so soft. Water wants to find its lowest level. Heart-mind wants to unify, to gather. So one way to think about this, like I said, is like, concentrate, find an object, find the breath, even just a little bit, couple seconds every day. Another way to think about it is where do I find that pleasure in my body? Where do I find that wholesome pleasure in letting go, in resting and relaxing? the mind very naturally gravitates towards pleasure. Little tiny dopamine hits are what this whole society is based on. It's the fuel that runs our whole civilization. Little tiny short-term bursts. That's fine. But there is an endless well of deep well-being, of blissful relaxation that is your very own heart, mind, body. And you can develop and pursue this relationship with it. Okay, on that note, if you haven't already fallen asleep, just see if you can gently find your comfy way of sitting with that. And if you like, you can notice the sensation of your breath as it flows in and flows out. You can even, if you like, when you notice the breath flowing in, you can mentally say in. And when you notice the breath flowing out, you can mentally say out. If you like, when you are noticing the beautiful sensation of your precious breathing, on the out breath, at the end of the out breath, you can just mentally count 1. And on the next out breath, mentally count 2. And you can just keep counting your breath up to 8 or 10, whatever works for you. And when something else comes up, you can notice that. And if you want, you can come back to your breath. And then, like I was saying, if you want to, you can just sit and in this very gentle way, look for the pleasure. Where is the nice feeling in the body, in the heart mind? And see if you can zero in on that softly. And then let it all go.